Hello everyone. In this video, we will do the daily current affairs analysis of 11th December 2021. The first topic which we will discuss is all about the sedition law. It is from GS paper 2 and topic is government policies and interventions. What exactly is sedition? Whoever by words, either spoken or written, or by signs, or by visible representation or otherwise brings or attempts to bring into hatred or contempt or excites or attempts to excite disaffection towards the government established by law shall be punished with imprisonment for life, to which fine may be added, or without a fine. Do we require a proper definition of sedition? For far too long, the sedition legislation has been a source of contention. Governments are frequently chastised for using Section 124A of the Indian Penal Code (IPC) to prosecute vociferous critiques of their policies. As a result, this section is viewed as a restriction on people's freedom of expression and it falls short of the Constitution's provisions for justifiable restrictions on freedom of speech in Article 19. Since the colonial British overlords enacted the statute in the 1860s, it has been the subject of heated discussion. Several prominent liberation fighters, including Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, were charged with sedition. It is the prince among the political provisions of the Indian Penal Code designed to restrict the citizens' liberty. According to Mahatma Gandhi, it was very offensive and obnoxious according to Nehru and should have no place in any body of laws that we might pass. The sooner we get rid of it, the better, Nehru replied. Relevant Supreme Court decisions include the Kedarnath Singh vs State of Bihar case 1962. In the Kedarnath Singh vs State of Bihar case 1962, a five-judge Supreme Court constitutional bench laid out some guiding principles when dealing with offences under Section 124A of the IPC. The court decided that comments expressing disapproval of the government's activities without provoking public disruption through acts of violence would not be punished. The Supreme Court clarified in Balwant Singh vs State of Punjab case 1995 that just screaming slogans, in this case about Khalistan Zindabad, did not constitute sedition. The sedition legislation is clearly being misunderstood and abused to silence opposition. The source of this news is The Hindu of 11th December 2021, page number 1. The next topic in news is details of the regulation of cryptocurrency bill 2021. It is from GS paper 2 and topic is government policies and interventions. Context: the central government will decide soon whether or not the cryptocurrency and regulation of official digital currency bill 2021 will be tabled in Parliament's winter session or not. Important requirements: it aims to regulate Bitcoin and apparently prohibits the use of private cryptocurrencies. Its goal is to establish a framework that will make it easier for the Reserve Bank of India to launch an official digital currency. So far, the bill's particular contours have not been made public and no public discussions have taken place. The current situation is as follows. In India, an interministerial commission on cryptocurrency has suggested that all private cryptocurrencies be banned with the exception of state-issued virtual currencies. The Reserve Bank of India (RBI) has also expressed worries about cryptocurrencies traded in the market, which it has conveyed to the government. The Supreme Court authorized banks and financial institutions to resume services linked to cryptocurrencies in March 2020, overturning the RBI's 2018 circular prohibiting them on the basis of proportionality. What are cryptocurrencies And how do they work? Cryptocurrencies are digital currencies that operate independently of a central bank and employ encryption techniques to govern the production of units of money and verify the transfer of funds. Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other cryptocurrencies are the examples. So, why does the government want to outlaw cryptocurrencies? Consumer protection. Cryptocurrencies pose a threat to consumers. They are not legal tender since they lack a governmental guarantee. Market volatility. Because of their speculative nature, they are extremely volatile. Bitcoin, for example, has dropped in value from $20,000 in December 2017 to $3,800 in November 2018. Risk in the field of security. If a user's private key is lost, they lose access to their cryptocurrency. Unlike traditional digital banking accounts, this password cannot be reset. Malware threats. In some circumstances, technical service providers, cryptocurrency exchanges, or wallets store these private keys, which are vulnerable to malware or hacking, and laundering of funds can also take place through the cryptocurrencies. Source of this news is The Hindu of 11th December 2021, page number 1. So the next topic in news is what is stubble burning. So it is from GS paper 3 and topic is environmental conservation related issues. So what is the cause of stubble burning? Farmers commonly prepare fields for wheat sowing in November since there is little time between rice harvest and wheat sowing. Impact: stubble burning emits toxic gases such as carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, and particulate matter as well as particle matter. So, why do the farmers choose to burn their stubble? They don't have any other options for properly utilizing them. Farmers are ill equipped to cope with waste because they cannot afford the latest waste handling technology that is available. Owing to lower income due to crop damage, farmers are more prone to burn up their fields to save money rather than investing in scientific stubble management methods. So, benefits of stubble burning include it clears the field rapidly and is the most cost effective option. It kills the weeds, including herbicide resistant weeds. Slugs and other pests are killed. It's possible to minimize nitrogen binders. So, stubble burning's consequences. Open stubble burning releases a considerable amount of dangerous pollutants into the sky, including harmful gases such as methane, CH4, carbon monoxide, CO, volatile organic compound, VOC, and carcinogenic polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. They have the potential to produce smoke in the future. Soil fertility: burning husk on the ground depletes the soil's nutrients, making it less fertile. Heat penetration: heat created by stubble burning enters the soil, causing moisture and beneficial bacteria to be lost. Alternatives to stubble burning include the following: encourage the use of power plants that are based on paddy straw. It will also provide job opportunities. Crop leftovers can enhance soil moisture and activate the growth of soil microbes, resulting in greater plant growth. By composting the discarded leftovers, the farmers can create enriched organic manure. Scientific research can uncover new potential for industrial use, such as yeast protein extraction. So, what should be done according to the Supreme Court's findings? Those who do not burn their stubble could be given incentives, while those who do continue to do so could be given disincentives. The existing minimum support price MSP scheme must be interpreted in such a way that it allows states to withhold the benefit of MSP to those who continue to burn crop residue entirely or partially. So, model of Chhattisgarh. The Chhattisgarh government has embarked on an interesting experiment by establishing Gauthans. A Gauthan is a 5-acre field kept in common by each community where all unused stubble is gathered through Parali Dan, people's donations, and transformed into organic fertilizer by mixing it with cow dung and a few natural enzymes. The program also creates jobs for young people in rural areas. The government encourages parali to be transported from the farm to the nearest Gothan. 2000 Gothans have been successfully developed by the state. So source of this news is The Hindu of 11th December 2021, page number 8. So next topic in news is all about the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. So it is from GS paper 2 and topic is constitutional and non-constitutional bodies. So CAG's background in chapter 5 of part 5 of the Indian Constitution, the Comptroller and Auditor General of India CAG is established as an autonomous office. The CAG is specified in Articles 148 to 151 of the Indian Constitution. He is the Indian Audit and Accounts Department's head. He is the keeper of the public purse and oversees the country's whole financial system at both the national and state levels. In the field of financial administration, it is his responsibility to uphold the Indian Constitution and the rules of Parliament, appointment and terms of office. By a warrant under his hand and seal, the President of India appoints the CAG. He is in office for 6 years or until he reaches the age of 65, whichever comes first. So duties of CAG include CAG audits all expenditure accounts from the Consolidated Fund of India as well as the consolidated funds of each state and UTs with the Legislative Assembly. CAG audits all expenditures from India's contingency fund and public account as well as each state's contingency fund and public account. All trading, manufacturing, profit and loss accounts, balance sheets and other subsidiary accounts maintained by any department of the central government and state governments are audited by the CAG. When required by associated laws, the CAG audits the receipts and expenditures of all bodies and authorities significantly financed from central or state income, government companies, and other corporations and bodies. He determines and certifies the net profits of any tax or duty, and his certification is final. He serves as a counselor, companion, and philosopher to the Parliament's Public Accounts Committee. So reports, he presents his audit reports on the centre's and states' accounts to the President and Governor, who then presents them to both chambers of Parliament and the state legislature respectively. He presents the President with the 3 audit reports, one on appropriation accounts, one on finance accounts, and one on public undertakings. So source of this news is The Hindu of 11th December 2021, page number 4. So the next topic in news is about the International Solar Alliance. So it is from GS paper 3 and topic is environmental conservation related issues. So ISA's background, the International Solar Alliance ISA is an alliance of more than 120 countries, the majority of which are sunshine countries that lie entirely or partially between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, which was founded by India and is now open to all the UN members. The Paris Declaration created the International Solar Alliance ISA. It is an organization dedicated to the promotion of solar energy among its members. So the ISA's main goals include the global deployment of over 1000 gigawatts of solar power capacity and the mobilization of over US$ 1000 billion in solar energy investment by 2030. So what exactly does it do? As an action-oriented organization, the ISA brings together countries with rich solar potential to aggregate global demand, thereby reducing prices through bulk purchase, creating the economies of scale facilitating the deployment of existing solar technologies at scale and promoting collaborative solar R&D with capacity building. So when did it come into force? ISA formally became a de jure treaty-based international intergovernmental organization with its headquarters in Gurugram, India, when the ISA framework agreement went into effect on December 6th, 2017. So source of this news is The Hindu of 11th December 2021, page number 8. So thanks a lot for watching the analysis video. Have a nice day.